The barricade rattled under my feet, the ground lurched, and the music kept playing like nothing was wrong. I was shouting to clear the plaza when the asphalt split open like a zipper, sending cups, tables, chairs, and 3 grown men sliding toward the edge before someone yanked them back. Sirens wailed somewhere below. A security guard shoved the barrier closer, pushing people forward as the concrete dipped again. "Stay calm," a woman's voice cut over the speakers. "This is a controlled event. No one is in danger." I looked up. She stood at the mic in a spotless red vest, ordering 5 of her own guards to pull the barricades even tighter right where the ground was breathing. The stage lights flickered, a bench tilted. Several people fell, others screamed in panic. "Shut the alarms off," she said, calm as a checklist. "We have a temporary permit, like a piece of paper could hold the ground together." Rain began to needle the dust. Phones went up. I felt the slow, heavy roll under my boots and knew this wasn't panic. It was physics catching up. And physics doesn't care who signed the permit. County police cruisers and fire engines skidded in lights blazing. A geologist jumped out, screaming for an evacuation now. She waved him off without even turning. "This park opens today," she said, into the mic. "No matter what." Then the ground answered her, and the reason she rushed this opening finally surfaced, buried under the park the whole time, seconds before everything else went under. Her name was Celia Wren, president of the Coppervale Terrace Homeowners Association, and she acted like the ground answered to her. She didn't ask for clearance or wait for engineers. She raised one finger, and the guards moved. Barricades were dragged back into place, even as cracks crept across the plaza, thin at first, then unmistakable. Celia stood at the microphone in a spotless red vest posture, straight voice, steady, issuing orders like this was just another board meeting she controlled. "Close the side exits," she said. "We're proceeding." In Coppervale Terrace, Celia Wren wasn't just an HOA president. She controlled fines, approvals, permits, and access. She decided whose voice mattered, and whose paperwork disappeared into committee folders, labeled "resolved." Residents knew the routine argue, and the fines came. Push harder, and lean threats followed. Stay quiet, and things stayed smooth. Today, with the park opening behind her and a $6, $4 million amenities deal racing the clock ahead of a scheduled audit, Celia wasn't about to let cracks in the ground or warnings from me slow anything down. She tapped her clipboard once and said the line she'd been hiding behind for weeks: "We have a temporary permit." Behind her heels, the earth shifted. The first pushback didn't come from a letter or a fine. It came from people walking the trail like the ground owed them peace. I was retying a loose warning flag when a couple stopped a few steps away, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the red tape, snapping in the wind. "Do you really need all this?" the man asked, gesturing at the markers. "It's kind of aggressive. It's a safety line," I said. "That crack running downhill, it's new." They didn't look down. They looked past me toward the houses uphill. "The HOA says the soil's stable," the woman replied. "You're making people uncomfortable." By that afternoon, one of the flags was gone, pulled clean out, and tossed into the brush below the trail. I climbed down, retrieved it, and put it back exactly where it had been. The next morning, 2 more were missing. A neighbor I barely recognized caught up with me near the mailbox cluster. Friendly smile. Lowered voice. "Off the record, Celia's been asking questions. She thinks you're trying to scare residents. You might want to dial it back." That evening my phone chimed. Subject: notice of visual obstruction, no greeting, no signature. Just 4 photos of my markers taken from different angles, each circled in red like evidence. The message warned that non-conforming installations on or near common areas could lead to penalties if not corrected. I replied once, calm, professional. I attached the hazard map, the soil report, and a single sentence. "These markers indicate a documented instability zone." An hour later the response arrived. "Your materials have been reviewed." That was it. No questions, no discussion, just a dismissal. The flags stayed. The cracks stayed too thin at first, then longer branching after light rain. People kept walking over them, trusting the trail because someone in charge told them it was fine. Standing there alone, resetting another loosened stake, I finally understood this wasn't about taste or misunderstanding. Someone needed those warnings gone quietly before they made the wrong people nervous. The board didn't argue with me. They stepped around me. A black HOA utility SUV rolled slowly up the trail one morning, tires crunching where the cracks had started to braid together. 2 men climbed out wearing matching vests with Coppervale Terrace stitched over the chest. One carried a tablet. The other held a folded notice. "We're conducting a routine compliance inspection," the man with the tablet said, already recording. "You've been warned about unauthorized installations." I asked who authorized them to enter the slope. "The board," he replied. President Wren signed off. They photographed everything, every flag, every stake, every post, except the fractures. Those they stepped around carefully, as if pretending they weren't there might make them disappear. That afternoon, the letter arrived. Not a fine this time. A board resolution. Effective immediately, the slope below the trail was reclassified as Association View property, placing it under HOA control for maintenance and aesthetic consistency. Any unapproved signage, markers, or barriers would be removed at the owner's expense. Continued interference would trigger escalating penalties and potential legal action. Buried on page 3 was the line that mattered most. Temporary safety authorization granted under Permit T17. B. No engineer's name, no inspection date, just a stamp. I requested the permit file. The reply came from the HOA's attorney, 3 sentences informing me the document was confidential and that further inquiries would be considered harassment. That evening, I watched workers string decorative rope along the trail, threading it directly through the zone I'd marked for years. They smiled and waved as they passed, trusting the logo on their vests more than the ground under their boots. This wasn't neighbor friction anymore. The system had arrived and it was wearing authority like armor. I didn't find the motive on the hillside. I found it in a spreadsheet. A retired board treasurer, someone I barely knew, knocked on my door just after dusk. He didn't step inside. He handed me a manila envelope and kept his eyes on the trail behind my house like it might be listening. "I shouldn't have this," he said, "but you should." Inside were board minutes that never made the public portal payment schedules marked confidential, and a budget addendum dated 6 months earlier, right when the grading accelerated. The numbers told the story fast. A $6. 4 million amenities package tied to completion benchmarks, with a penalty clause that kicked in if the park wasn't open before the end of the quarter. Miss the date and the HOA would owe mid-6 figures back to the developer. Hit it, and the board unlocked bonuses, reimbursements, and a refinancing window that erased a prior deficit. That's why the warnings had to disappear. I traced a line across the documents and found the lie, a soil stability addendum, attached to the permit file, stamped but unsigned. The language was vague, lifted from a landscaping template, not a geotechnical assessment. Someone had slipped it in to justify the temporary permit. Celia kept waving like a shield. I went back to the slope in the rain. The cracks were wider, now soft at the edges, water pooling where the clay breathed. I watched kids run past the rope line, parents trusting the trail because a logo said it was safe. For the first time, fear hit hard, not abstract, not theoretical, real, heavy, the kind that sits in your chest and doesn't move. I sent the documents to the county clerk and the engineering office. I CC'd the board. No commentary, just files. The reply came from Celia within minutes. "Stand down," she wrote. "You're interfering with a lawful project." I looked out at the slope as the rain deepened and understood the real stakes. This wasn't about taste or power anymore. It was about a deadline that mattered more to her than the ground and people beneath it. And once money sets the clock, it doesn't stop ticking just because the earth starts to move. The county didn't rush in with sirens. They came quietly, clipboards, badges, and a white pickup that parked just far enough away to avoid drawing attention. A surveyor named Harris walked the trail first, boots careful eyes, never leaving the ground. He stopped where the decorative rope crossed the old contour line and frowned. "This shouldn't be here," he said, more to himself than to me. He drove a steel pin into the soil. It sank too easily. By noon, the engineering office called back. The permit Celia kept citing didn't match the county record. Same number, different attachment. The soil addendum in their system showed a red flag liquefaction potential requiring mitigation, while the HOA's version had that line replaced with boilerplate language about passive recreational use. Someone had swapped pages. The clerk flagged it immediately. "That's not a clerical error," she said. "That's a material alteration." A code enforcement officer arrived next, then a deputy who stayed in his cruiser watching. They didn't shut anything down yet. They didn't need to. The questions alone changed the temperature. Contractors stopped joking. A foreman pulled me aside and asked quietly if I thought it was safe to keep working. That afternoon, Celia emailed the board and CC'd the neighborhood. "Routine county inquiry," she wrote. No findings, no cause for alarm. But she couldn't stop what followed. The county placed a hold notice pending verification. Not a closure, worse. Everything froze. Payments paused, inspections stacked up, deadlines slipped, and deadlines were the one thing she couldn't afford. By evening, I had 3 missed calls from unknown numbers and a voicemail from the HOA's attorney warning me about defamatory filings and personal liability. I didn't call back. The ground had already started making its case. The county was listening now, and once the system turns its head, it doesn't unsee what it's looking at. Celia didn't back down when the county flagged the file. She sped up. By sunrise, the HOA blasted a community update to every inbox. The county inquiry was routine. The slope was stable, and anyone spreading fear-based misinformation would be dealt with under the harassment policy. At the bottom was a new announcement in bold Coppervale Unity Night this Friday. Food trucks, live music, family games, celebrate our new park space. It wasn't celebration, it was pressure, a public performance designed to drown out doubt. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a private message from an unknown resident account. No greeting, just 2 screenshots, a payment authorization, and an internal board note. Release funds before audit. T17B must remain clean. Then a second line that turned my stomach. If we pause, we lose the $6, 4M package, and the board goes down. A whistleblower finally. I didn't write a speech. I didn't argue in the forum. I posted one thing, a single PDF bundle with timestamps, 2 versions of the permit attachment. The altered page highlighted the payment schedule and the clause that punished delay. No commentary, just facts. The neighborhood thread detonated. Some people defended Celia on instinct. Others started posting photos, cracks in patios, water pooling, where it never had doors that suddenly didn't close right. One woman wrote, "My kid's soccer practice is scheduled on that slope." Is this real? Another "why did they change the permit" page? Celia responded within minutes, fast and sharp. Illegal documents, fabricated, this is sabotage. Then she tagged me by name and demanded the admins ban me. That's when the county engineering office called again, this time with a voice that had dropped all politeness. "We're sending a field team," the inspector said. "Tomorrow morning, early." I looked out at the slope. Rain was forecast overnight. Not a drizzle, steady, soaking rain. The kind that didn't just wet the surface. The kind that woke the clay. Downhill workers were already staking tent lines for Unity Night, hammering anchors into ground that felt soft even from where I stood. My phone vibrated. A new HOA email hit every inbox. Unity Night is still on. We open no matter what. I stared at the words until they blurred, because I knew exactly what came next, and I wasn't sure the county would arrive in time to stop it. Unity Night was already in motion when the storm finally broke. Music thumped under the tents, bass vibrating through wet ground that no longer felt solid. Food trucks hissed and steamed in the rain. Kids ran across the grass, shoes slipping, parents laughing too loud, pretending the wind wasn't pushing water sideways across the lights. I stepped onto the lower slope and felt it immediately. The ground dipped under my weight, slow and wrong, like standing on soaked cardboard. "Clear the lower area," I shouted. "Get people uphill, now." A guard stepped in front of me, arm out, palm open. "You can't be here," he said, eyes darting past me toward the stage. "Orders." On the platform, Celia Wren stood at the microphone, red vest, flawless, under the lights, rain streaking down around her. "Please remain calm," she said smoothly. "This is a controlled community event." Behind her, a tent anchor tore free with a sharp crack. One corner sagged. A bench shifted just an inch, but it didn't slide back. Someone screamed. The grass near the rope line buckled, folding inward as muddy water pushed up from below. People stumbled. A stroller tipped. Phones flew up recording instead of running. Red and blue lights exploded through the rain as a sheriff's cruiser skidded sideways to a stop. A county geologist jumped out, helmet already, on, shouting over the music. "Evacuate now! This slope is failing!" Celia leaned closer to the mic, jaw tight. "No one moves," she said. "This event is authorized." Then the ground dropped hard enough to knock people off their feet, and in that instant the crowd understood this wasn't panic anymore. It was collapse beginning. The failure didn't roar. It spread. The ground sagged outward in a widening arc, grass tearing free in sheets, as brown water boiled up from beneath. A floodlight snapped and went dark. The music cut mid-beat, replaced by screaming and the hollow sound of soil giving way. The county geologist planted his boots and raised his voice. "This is an active slide. Full evacuation. Now." A deputy shoved through the guards and held up his radio. "County order," he barked. "Clear the area." Celia turned furious. "You don't have jurisdiction." The geologist cut her off and held his tablet up so the body cams could see it. Two documents filled the screen side by side, the county's permit attachment stamped unstable mitigation required, and the HOA's version clean vague, missing the warning line entirely. "Someone altered this," he said. "That's not an oversight." The crowd pressed in phones, filming faces pale as another section slumped and a concrete bench cracked down the middle. Mud swallowed the legs. A plaque flashed once under the lights before disappearing. Celia opened her mouth to speak. Nothing came out. The evidence was already moving faster than she could, and the hill was still sliding. Celia finally lost the microphone, not because someone took it, but because the ground did. A deep tearing crack ran beneath the stage, splitting the concrete with a sound like a gunshot. The platform lurched. Celia staggered, heels skidding clipboard, slipping from her hands and vanishing into the mud below. "Get her out," someone shouted, but she wasn't in charge anymore. Deputies surged forward, pulling people back as the slope let go in slow, brutal waves. Tents folded, tables slid. A section of turf peeled away and collapsed into the widening basin, carrying lights, cables, and benches with it. One structure, fresh lumber, brand new, tilted, then slid downhill like it had never belonged there at all. Celia screamed over the noise, pointing wildly. "This isn't on me." The permit was approved. The consultant said. The county geologist didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "This site should have been closed months ago," he said, "and you knew it." A deputy took her by the arm as another section dropped. Cameras caught it all, her panic, her denial, the exact moment authority drained out of her face. "Ma'am," the deputy said, firm and loud enough for the crowd to hear, "you're being removed from the site pending investigation." As she was escorted away, the hillside finished its sentence. The park slid into itself quietly, completely leaving nothing behind but broken ground and a crowd staring at the cost of being ignored. The shelter gym smelled like wet clothes and silence. People sat where they'd dropped on bleachers against walls on the floor, wrapped in borrowed blankets, staring at nothing. Phones buzzed with missed calls and alerts, but no one spoke above a whisper. The music from Unity Night felt like it had happened to another neighborhood, another lifetime. I moved through the room without anyone stopping me. No guards, no clipboard looks, just nods. A hand on my arm. A woman mouthed "thank you" and wiped her eyes. A man who'd once complained about my flags wouldn't meet my gaze, but he nodded too. Someone started clapping near the back. It didn't spread. It didn't need to. A county medic checked a kid's scraped knee near the bleachers. The child was crying not from pain, but from the shock of falling ground. His mother held him tighter than she ever had before. Outside, rain tapped softly against the high windows. Inside, the pressure had broken. The fear didn't disappear, but it changed shape. Less chaos, more understanding. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was bracing for impact. The community finally knew what I'd been trying to say all along, and no one argued anymore. A county official stepped into the gym and raised a phone, putting it on speaker so everyone could hear. His voice was calm, clinical, final. "Effective immediately," he said, "the Coppervale Terrace HOA is placed under emergency receivership, pending investigation into permit fraud, document alteration, and reckless endangerment." The words landed heavier than any shout. He continued reading from a prepared notice. Criminal referrals filed, civil liability opened, a forensic audit ordered on all board-controlled accounts, the $6, $4 million amenities contract frozen in place, no payments released, no penalties waived, insurance carriers notified, coverage suspended for the damaged site. A woman near the front gasped. Someone else swore under their breath. The official didn't pause. All enforcement actions issued by the current board, including fines, liens, and compliance penalties, are hereby nullified until further review. I felt something in my chest finally unclench. Additionally, he said no land within the affected zone may be reclassified or developed without homeowner consent, third-party geotechnical review, and a recorded county vote. The call ended, no flourish, no speech, just consequences. Around the room, people exhaled. Some cried quietly. Others stared at the floor, recalculating futures that had looked solid just hours earlier. I leaned back against the wall, damp jacket still on, and, for the first time since this started, the system wasn't pressing down on me. It had turned cleanly on the people who abused it. A county official stepped into the gym and raised a phone, putting it on speaker so everyone could hear. His voice was calm, clinical, final. "Effective immediately," he said, "the Coppervale Terrace HOA is placed under emergency receivership, pending investigation into permit fraud, document alteration, and reckless endangerment." The words landed heavier than any shout. He continued reading from a prepared notice. Criminal referrals filed. Civil liability opened. A forensic audit ordered on all board-controlled accounts. The $6.4 million amenities contract frozen in place. No payments released. No penalties waived. Insurance carriers notified. Coverage suspended for the damaged site. A woman near the front gasped. Someone else swore under their breath. The official didn't pause. All enforcement actions issued by the current board, including fines, liens, and compliance penalties, are hereby nullified until further review. I felt something in my chest finally unclench. Additionally, he said, no land within the affected zone may be reclassified or developed without homeowner consent, third-party geotechnical review, and a recorded county vote. The call ended. No flourish, no speech. Just consequences. Around the room, people exhaled. Some cried quietly. Others stared at the floor, recalculating futures that had looked solid just hours earlier. I leaned back against the wall, damp jacket still on, and for the first time since this started, the system wasn't pressing down on me. It had turned cleanly on the people who abused it. No one went back to the park. From the gym doors, we could see the slope through the rain-streaked windows, dark, broken, taped off under floodlights. County workers were already planting stakes of their own, this time steel marking a permanent exclusion zone that wouldn't be argued away by aesthetics or deadlines. A city engineer handed me a printed notice and read it aloud for anyone close enough to hear. The land would be converted into a non-buildable geological buffer, maintained only for drainage and monitoring. No structures, no events, no exceptions. The words in perpetuity sat heavy at the bottom of the page. Someone asked where the new park would go. The engineer shook his head. Not here. Later, as people filtered out, I walked to the edge of the lights and stood where my old warning line used to be. Mud clung to my boots. Water moved safely, now guided into channels cut by people who finally listened. A steel marker had already been driven into the ground, its face stamped with one sentence. UN stable. Zone. No development. It wasn't red plastic. It didn't flutter. It didn't need to. Behind me, the neighborhood murmured plans, changing apologies, offered voices lower, steadier. Ahead of me, the ground was quiet again, not because it had forgiven us, but because we'd stopped pretending we knew better. I rested my hand on the marker and stepped back. The line held this time, and so did we.